Solving quadratic equations by quadratic formula. Our given problem, we have x squared plus 3x minus 70 equals to 0. This is a quadratic equation, and the quadratic equation is of the form a x squared plus bx plus c equals to 0. So looking at our equation and looking at the form of quadratic equation, let us now find the values of a, b, and c. So our a here will be equal to, since there is no numerical coefficient, this is understood as 1, since 1 multiplied by x squared is x squared. So our a here is 1. And then our b will be the numerical coefficient of the second term. So our b here is positive 3. Our c will be the third term, or the constant, and this is negative 70. Okay, so since we now have the values of a, b, and c, we can now solve the quadratic equation by using the quadratic formula. Our quadratic formula is x equals to negative b plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So our b here negative, our b is positive 3, so this will be negative 3 plus minus the square root. So our b here again is 3, so this will be 3 squared minus 4 multiplied by a, that is 1, multiplied by c, which is negative 70. Okay, and this will be divided by 2 multiplied by a, which is positive 1. So we will have here, our x here will be 3 multiplied by negative, this is negative 3, plus minus the square root of, okay, 3 raised to the power of 2, that will be positive 9, and 4 multiplied by 1 multiplied by negative 70, this will be positive 280, all over 2 times 1, that is 2. So our x here will be equal to negative 3 plus minus the square root of 289 all over positive 2. Okay, so let us find out the square root of 289. So this will be our x sub 1 here. We will have two values for x. So our x sub 1 will be negative 3 plus the square root of 289 is positive 17 divided by 2. So our x sub 1 will be negative 3 plus 17, this is positive 14 divided by 2, this will be equal to positive 7. So our x sub 1 is positive 7. Our x sub 2 here will be equal to negative 3. And we will have minus the square root of 289, that will be 17 all over positive 2. So our x sub 2 will be equal to negative 3 minus 17, negative 20 divided by 2. This will be negative 10. So therefore our x sub 1 will be positive 7 and our x sub 2 is negative 10. They are our final answers. Solving quadratic equations by quadratic formula. Our next problem will be y squared minus 25y plus 150 equals to 0. So this is quadratic equations, and it is of the form a y squared plus by plus c equals to 0. Let us now identify the values for a, for b, and for c. So the value for a here will be the numerical coefficient of our first term. Since there is no numerical coefficient, it is understood as 1. Since 1 multiplied by y squared, that is equal to y squared. So our a here will be positive 1. And then our value for b will be the numerical coefficient of our second term, and this is negative 25. The value for c will be our constant, and our constant is positive 150. Okay, so our quadratic formula now, this will be equal to y equal to negative b plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, and this will be divided by 2 multiplied by a. And then we are going to substitute the values. So we have here y equals to, so our b here will be negative 25 plus minus the square root of. So again, our b is negative 25 raised to the power of 2 minus 4. Our a is 1 multiplied by c, which is 150. So this will be multiplied by 2. So 2 multiplied by a, that will give, okay, this will be 2 times 1. Okay. So again, our y here is negative times negative 25 plus minus, okay, the square root of negative 25 squared minus 4 times 1 times 150 all over 2 times 1. Okay, so let us continue. Let us rewrite that. So again, we have y equals to negative times negative 25 plus minus the square root of. So negative 25 raised to the power of 2 minus 4 multiplied by 1 by 150. And this will be divided by 2 times 1. So y here will be negative times negative 25, that will be positive 25 plus minus the square root of. Okay, so we have here negative 25 raised to the power of 2. This will give us 625 minus 4 times 1 times 150. This will give us 600. And this will be divided by 2. So our y sub 1 here will be equal to 25 plus, okay, so first we are going to use the addition sign. So we are going to use the plus sign here. So 25 plus, so 625 minus 600, this will be the square root of 25 all over 2. And our y sub 2 will be equal to, so we are going to use here the negative sign. So we are going to use the negative sign for y sub 2. So this will be 25 minus the square root of 25 divided by 2. So our y sub 1 here will be 25 plus the square root of 25 is 5 divided by 2. So our y sub 1 here will be 30 divided by 2. Therefore, y sub 1 will be positive 15. Our y sub 2 will be equal to 25 minus the square root of 25, that is 5, all over 2. So our y sub 2 will be 25 minus 5, that is 20, divided by 2. So 20 divided by 2 is 10. Therefore, y sub 1 equals to 15, y sub 2 equals to 10. They are our final answers. Solving quadratic equations by quadratic formula. Our next problem, we have 4y squared minus 48y plus 140 equals to 0. So this is a quadratic formula, and it is of the form ax, or rather a y squared plus by plus c equals to 0. Now, our a here will be the numerical coefficient of our first term. So a here will be equal to the numerical coefficient of our first term. This is positive 4. Our b will be the numerical coefficient of our second term. This is negative 48. And our c is our constant, and the third term, that is positive 140. So we can now solve this using the quadratic formula. Our quadratic formula is equal to, okay, this is not x, but this is equal to y. So this will be y is equal to negative b plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Okay, so the values here will be, so our b here is negative 48, so this will be negative times negative 48 plus minus the square root. So again, our b is negative 48, so this will be negative 48 raised to the power of 2 minus 4 multiplied by a, which is 4, and our c is positive 140. This will be divided by 2 multiplied by a, and that is positive 4. Okay, so our y there, we have negative times negative 48 plus minus the square root of negative 48 squared minus 4 times 140 all over 2 times 4. Okay, so let's continue. Again, our y now will be negative times negative 48 plus minus the square root. Our b squared here will be negative 48 raised to the power of 2 minus 4 times 4 times 140 all over 2 multiplied by 4. Okay, so let us now solve for y. So negative times negative, that will be positive 48 plus minus the square root of. Okay, so negative 48 raised to the power of 2, this will give us 2,304. And subtract this by 4 multiplied by 4 multiplied by 140. And this will give us 2,240. So divide this by 2 times 4, that is positive 8. So our y here will be equal to 48 plus minus the square root of. Okay, 2,304 minus 2,240, this will give us positive 64, and this will be divided by 8. So our y sub 1 here will be equal to 48, and then we are going to use the plus sign, so this will be 48 plus the square root of 64 is 8 divided by 8. Our y sub 2 will be equal to 48, and then we are going to use the minus sign or the subtraction. 48 minus square root of 64, that will be 8 all over 8. So our y sub 1 here will be 48 plus 8, that will be 56. So 56 divided by 8. Okay, so 56 divided by 8, this will give us positive 7. Okay, let's continue. Y sub 2 here will be equal to 48 minus 8. This will give us 40 divided by 8, and 40 divided by 8, this will give us positive 5. So therefore, y sub 1 equals to positive 7 and y sub 2 equals to positive 5. They are our final answers. Solving quadratic equations by the quadratic formula. Our next problem, we have y squared plus 8y plus 7 equals to 0. So to solve this quadratic equation by using the quadratic formula, let us first determine the values of a, b, and c. So the quadratic equation is of the form a y squared plus by plus c equals to 0. So the letters a, b, they represent the numerical coefficient of the first and the second terms, while the c here represents our third term or the constant. Okay, so let us now write the values of a, b, and c. So the value for a here, since we do not have a numerical coefficient, this is understood as 1, since 1 multiplied by y squared is equal to y squared. So our a is positive 1. Our b here will be the number 8 or positive 8, and our c is the third term or the constant, and that is positive 7. Okay, and then we will write this. We are now going to write the quadratic formula. Our quadratic formula is y is equal to negative b plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2 multiplied by a. And then we are going to substitute the values of a, b, and c to our equation. So y here will be equal to negative, our b is positive 8, so this will be negative 8 plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. Our b is positive 8, raise this to power of 2, minus 4 multiplied by a, which is positive 1, and our c is positive 7. Okay. And then divide the numerator by our denominator. Our denominator is 2 multiplied by a. The value of a is positive 1. Okay, so let us continue. Our y here will be equal to, so negative 8 plus minus the square root of. So our b is positive 8, and 8 raised to the power of 2, that will give us positive 64, minus 4 times 1 times 7, that will be minus 28 all over 2 multiplied by a, which is positive 1. So this will give us negative 8 plus minus the square root of 64 minus 28 is positive 36 all over 2. So our y sub 1 here, we will have two values. So our y sub 1 will be negative 8, and then we are going to use the addition first. So addition, that is plus. Okay, so plus the square root of 36 is 6, and divide this by 2. Our y sub 2 now will be negative 8, and then we are going to use the other sign, that is the minus sign. So this will be negative 8 minus. Okay, so we are now using the minus sign, and the square root of 36 is 6. So negative 8 minus 6 all over 2. So y sub 1 here will be negative 8 plus 6, that is equal to negative 2. So this will be negative 2 divided by 2. So negative 2 divided by 2, that is negative 1. Our y sub 2 here, negative 8 minus 6, negative 14 divided by 2. So negative 14 divided by 2 is negative 7. Therefore, y sub 1 equals to negative 1 and y sub 2 equals to negative 7 are our final answers. Solving quadratic equations by quadratic formula. Our given, we have m squared minus 12m equals to negative 28. So to solve this quadratic equation by quadratic formula, we first need to transpose all the terms to the left side. So we need to transpose negative 28 to the left. Transposing, we will have m squared minus 12m. If we transpose negative, this will change sign. This will become positive 28 equals to 0. So our quadratic equation, it is now of the form a m squared plus bm plus c equals to 0. So the values for a, b, and c are as follows. Our a here will be the numerical coefficient of our first term, and since there is none, this is understood as 1. So our a is equal to 1. And for our b here will be the numerical coefficient of our second term. This is negative 12. And our c is our constant, or the third term. This is positive 28. So our quadratic equation now will be equal to m equals to negative b plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So our m now, our m here will be equal to negative, and our b is negative 12 plus minus the square root of negative 12 raised to the power of 2 minus 4 multiplied by a, which is 1, multiplied by positive 28, which is c. And then divide this by 2 multiplied by 1. So our m will be negative times negative. This will give us positive 12 plus minus the square root of, okay, negative 12 raised to the power of 2. That will give us 144. Okay, so this will give us positive 144 minus 4 multiplied by 1 multiplied by 28. This will be minus 112 all over 2. So our m sub 1 now will be equal to 12, and then we are going to use the addition first, plus the square root of, okay, 144 minus 112, that is the square root of 32 all over 2. Our m sub 2 will be equal to 12, and then we are going to use the minus the square root of 32 all over 2. So m sub 1 here will be equal to 12 plus, we can factor out 32, so this will be the square root of 16 times 2 all over 2. So this will be m sub 1 equals to 12 divided by 2 is 6, and this will be plus, okay, so the square root of 16 is 4, so this will be 4 square root of 2 all over 2. But we can still simplify this, so this will be 6 plus 2 square root of 2. Excuse. Our m sub 2 would also be 12 minus 4, okay, since the square root of 16 is 4, so this will be minus 4 square root of 2 all over 2. So our m sub 2 would also be 6 divided by 2, 6, or rather 12 divided by 2 is 6, and this will be minus 4 divided by 2, that is 2 square root of 2. So these are our final answers.